Okay, so I'm here with Mike Pannell on the line. I met Mike last year in Wyoming, of all places, and he showed some really cool stuff that we're going to be showing on the channel here over the next 2 months. Thanks for joining us, Mike. I appreciate it and appreciate your time.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So, I wanted to invite you on the show to give people an idea of who you are so that when you show up on the channel here in a week or two, they won't be wondering who's this guy and why is he on the channel suddenly? So,
Certainly.
yeah, so Mike's been doing historic preservation. How long have you been doing this kind of work?
Since about 1987, I would think.
Okay. How did you get started in it?
So, well, I lived in England. Obviously, I was born in England, and we we lived within sight and sound of our local trains. And as you know, England is such an incredible place for railroad preservation and railway preservation in general. That we grew up with these trains. We travelled on them. We loved them very much, and they were going to be withdrawn in 1986 from their normal service, and they were going to be scrapped. So a group of us got together and decided we couldn't bear the thought of living without them. So we decided we'd try and save one of them at least. And these trains were six-coach diesel multiple units. So they were two engines, one engine at each end, with passenger coaches in the middle. So they were complete units, basically. That's what they call them. So we decided we'd try and save one, and we raised some money, and we bid for them when they went for scrap, and we ended up buying 16 coaches, which was two complete units plus spare coaches as well, which we never dreamed we'd get, but that's how really we got into it. And then we were faced with the mammoth task of knowing where to store them and what to do with them and how to restore them. And none of us really had ever done any restoration before, so we were really jumping completely in at the deep end on that kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. It sounds like you got more than you expected, too.
We did, yeah, a lot more than we expected. We had a lot of friends in the railroad industry. There were lots of enthusiasts in management, and in various departments that we needed, to in order to get these trains. And so they helped us a lot, and they gave us huge amounts of advice and everything else, and they helped us along the way. And we ended up with the entire maintenance depot that these trains were housed in as well. So it worked out really well, and we over the years we restored these trains, and now one of them runs regular tours all over the country on the main line.
Right?
So it's been an amazing story, and really a really great success story for us.
Sure. So, as we're talking, and people can hear your accent and they're hearing how you came to be into historic preservation in the first place, I just want to be clear Mike is in Wyoming still. So, we're not talking
Still,
about, right? We're not talking about someone who's overseas right now. And I'm kind of curious if you wouldn't mind sharing with the viewers how you came to be in the States. And maybe you
well,
could talk a little bit about some of the projects you've been working on here.
okay, yeah, in the early 90s, I came over to Cheyenne to see the UP steam engines because the UP steam fleet is known worldwide. And Cheyenne, therefore, is a mecca for UP steam. So we came over, a friend of mine and myself came over to see those. And we between the two of us, we enjoyed Cheyenne, and people obviously wondered why we chose Cheyenne, and that was the whole reason. And then when I got married in the mid-90s, I brought my wife over here for our honeymoon to Cheyenne, which amazes people. The fact that we're still together having a honeymoon in Cheyenne is quite astonishing, apparently. But we decided to try and settle here because we like the lifestyle and everything else. And so in 2005, we emigrated and came to live first of all, in Arizona for a couple of years, and then in Cheyenne finally.
So, did you work on
So,
preservation projects in Arizona too?
well, I happened to fall into a job working on restoring Second World War aircraft and Vietnam era jets as well, which was something I'd never done before, but something I'd always wanted to do. So that was like a dream job for me. falling into that kind of thing too. So that was interesting.
So it was
And then
preservation of aircraft first in Arizona,
yeah,
then.
aircraft first, and then on to trains. And when we moved to Cheyenne, I remember seeing in '91. I remember seeing a passenger car in use as a house, and I was determined to follow it up and find out whether it was still in use as a house when we moved here. So I went to look for this wooden passenger car and found out that it was due to be demolished very soon. And the owner said, if you want it, you can have it. And so that was the beginnings of my preservation career, I guess you'd call it, or hobby, if you like, in Cheyenne.
Wow, how lucky is that?
It was really lucky because the car was an incredibly special car. It was an 1887 Colorado and Southern Pullman car. It was all wood, and I knew from the look of it and from the style of it that we were looking at the 1880s or 1890s, and we ended up with a basically free 1880s Pullman car to restore. So that was where it all began.
Now, this is the one that we took a look at on the program that's coming out in March, then?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, that's the one you saw with the silver leaf ceilings and all that kind of lovely stuff that we found, and the amazing history as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell the viewers now, this is something that's really cool. And you mentioned something during our talk that day about how the work you do is more like archeology than anything else when you're talking about the restoration on
Yeah,
these historic pieces of equipment. Talk about
it
that a
is
little bit.
because there's nobody to ask about how the car was constructed or its early history. You have to work back from finding any kind of number on the car somewhere and then work your way backwards. So we found the number 513 written above the door on the Pullman car. So it was then a case of going to local historians and national historians and authors to try and work out the car's history from that number backwards. So pretty soon we found its history was Colorado and Southern, and then it was Union Pacific, Denver and Gulf, and then it was Denver, Texas and Fort Worth. And then we found out that it was ordered by Grenville Dodge himself for the Denver, Texas and Fort Worth, and started service in March of 1888. It was in the first train that ran from Fort Worth to Denver. So it is archaeology because you can't go to the beginning and ask people. You have to just work your way back, looking at the evidence that you can find.
Right? So you're uncovering clues really and sort of deducing from that.
It's always the same way. It's always that working backwards
Right.
from what you can see.
Right. So now when I first met you, we were in the park in Cheyenne where the 4004 Big
Right.
Boy is. Now that was done. That wasn't done by your company. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit because you also work for Wasatch, right?
Yeah, I work for Wasatch Railroad Contractors. I've worked for them for probably 3 or 4 years now. And then I have a kind of small business of my own, doing work for other people on restoration projects and small things, small projects that I can do for them, and doing stuff in house kind of thing that other people can use me for. So
And you have a website for that too, right?
yeah, we do have a website for that, and it's I think it's well, you probably put it up on the screen, but I think it's www.vintagerail.com or something like that. I'd have to check on that, to be
Okay, well,
honest.
I'll put
I
it
can't
up on the
remember.
screen for
But yeah,
people to
please.
see. And then you also have a website that I've seen for the nonprofit, the High Plains Railroad Preservation Association.
That's correct. Yeah, that's there's a website for that, and that's www.highplainsrail.org
Okay.
for that
And
one.
I'll put that up on the screen as well so that people can go and look at the stuff that you're working on yourself. But can you talk a little
Okay.
bit about the restoration? Just so people know, the video that's coming out this month, which I'll talk about later in the podcast here, is Mike talking about the restoration project of the Big Boy 4004, which is in Holiday Park in Cheyenne. Can you talk a little bit about that, or maybe if there are some other interesting preservation projects that you've done? I think it would
Well,
be
the
interesting.
the big boy was the biggest project I've ever been involved in, and although it was a cosmetic, it was still a massive undertaking, obviously because of the size of the locomotive itself, and it was the first asbestos abatement that we'd ever done as a company as well. So uh, altogether, it was a huge undertaking and a difficult one because of the weather. And the asbestos being the first job we'd done on asbestos and just the sheer size of everything. But it came out really well. We were really, really pleased with it. We came out under budget. We came out on time, and the city were really happy with the results. And so, all in all, it was a great project to be involved in.
Yeah, and people can learn more about that when the video comes out here in a couple of
Right.
weeks. So, but
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. What do you find in your work doing this kind of, preservation and restoration? What's the best part about it for you? Like, what drives you to want to do it?
To me, it's uncovering the history because, just for instance, with the caboose that we've just pulled into the shop for restoration, we knew it was an 1880 Union Pacific caboose that we had. So it was the oldest UP caboose known to exist anywhere. But literally, after pulling the siding off that caboose, we found that we have an 1870s caboose of a design that was thought by everybody to be extinct, completely extinct. And yet here we are with a six-window caboose that had the octagonal cupola on top, the very earliest cabooses that UP ever had that looked like cabooses. And here we are with one of those. And that to me is, I mean, that's to me is spine-tingling stuff because you suddenly realise that you've got something that no one knew existed or thought they'd ever see again. So whether it's more modern history like with Big Boy or whether it's the really earliest history, it's the uncovering the history that's the main reason I do it, and I love doing that.
I could tell when we talked the first time that you get a bit of a thrill because you
Oh,
talked about.
certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to give away any spoil. I mean, it's not like we're talking about the next Star Wars movie here, so I can give away some spoilers. But I got that impression from talking to you the first time when you were describing taking the layers of paint inside that
Right.
Pullman car and uncovering gold leaf and numbers and all that stuff. I got that sense from you on that. So,
Yeah, and it's wonderful because it's things you're uncovering things that nobody in living memory has ever seen.
right?
Which is archaeology, isn't it? I mean, that is the absolute definition of archaeology. Let's be honest, and I find that just incredible. It's utterly fascinating. Whether it's uncovering layers of paint to find an original color shade, or uncovering something to find original lettering, or embellishments or decoration, whatever it is, it's stuff that people have never seen before in living memory, and that's fascinating to me because you're writing history. Really, you're writing railroad history.
Sure. Yeah, or right, exactly. Because especially if it's something that people haven't seen, there's no one alive to tell you about it. So,
That's right. That's
right?
right. Well, with the Union Pacific cabooses, there's an amazing Union Pacific caboose book that was written by James Ehrenberger, um, and and Don Strack as well. And it's an amazing book. It's like a Bible of UP cabooses. But with what I'm finding, we're filling in all sorts of really early pieces of history that aren't in the book. And so here we are in real life, uncovering the history and embellishing the story of these amazing pieces of equipment.
So, Mike, I'm noticing you have. It looks like quite a collection of models in the room that you're talking to us from. Is it you're a bit of a model foamer there?
I am, yes. Yeah, I tend to collect all the kind of toys that I remember as a child. But it goes kind of a bit beyond that. I get a bit carried away with these things. But so I collect English trains and I collect English kits and various other kits and bits and pieces like that I just remember as a kid. And most of the kits are unbuilt and they'll never be built. But I love the artwork that toys used to have. When toys were really designed for to get children's imaginations going. So I just collect all that kind of stuff to remind me of those good old days, if you like.
So it's a little bit of nostalgia involved, huh? Right? Well, that's great. Look, I want to thank you for taking the time out to talk to me today. And also, I really want to thank you for being available when we came to Wyoming because, I tell the story to people now, and when we came, I didn't know that we were going to make a video. I didn't know who you were. I had no clue about any of it. And I really appreciated your willingness to share the projects that you've worked on that people otherwise may have not been able to see. So
Yeah, well,
I'm,
thank you very much. And on that point, we're willing to show anybody that visits Cheyenne. They're always always able to get in touch with us, and we're always willing to show them our workshops and show them Big Boy and all those kind of things. We're always willing to do that. So please, don't feel afraid to ask if you can come and see what we're doing and all these projects.
well, what would be the best way for someone if they wanted to somehow get a hold of you to either see?
Um, Probably via Facebook, or via the yeah, really Facebook is probably the best medium, to be honest, or Messenger, or RYPN, the group online for railway preservation. That's a good way to contact us as well.
Okay.
But any of those mediums is good.
Okay,
The
so
Vintage Rail website is okay too. We could do that.
would so for Facebook, should they just look for you by name or
Yeah, look for me by name, or look for High Plains Railroad Preservation, or
okay.
the Car 57 project.
Okay.
All of our projects have their own page.
Oh,
So
okay.
even if you look up Union Pacific Caboose, you'll find one of our projects, and you can message us via that even.
Okay, that sounds
So
great.
yeah,
Okay, well that sounds great. I realize you're about to leave tomorrow for a trip to England.
back to
So,
England, back to
right.
work on the trains.
Oh, is that what you're going for? You're kidding.
I'm gonna No, not that reason, but I'm gonna spend a day down there working on the trains again, just for old time's sake.
Because
Yeah,
it's what you do,
because it's what I do. It's my
right?
first love, really, that was. So yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again for taking the time to talk. You can look up Mike on those various places. I've put them on the screen for you. I'll may talk about them after our interview is done here. And yeah, thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. See
All
you
right.
soon.
And now back to me in the studio.